All right, I think we're ready to get started here. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on best practices for virtual fairs. And we're going to be highlighting some campuses that really did a great job in executing the virtual involvement fair. My name is Kelly Ormsby. I am the Product Implementation and Support Manager here at CampusGroups. And I just wanted to extend a thank you to the Student Organization Summit, Adam, Daniel specifically, for bringing us together today for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts on what has made virtual involvement fairs successful on many campuses. So just a few housekeeping items before I introduce our hosts. We are recording this, so you will receive a recording. We'll send that along to you. Your lines are currently muted just to help out with that background noise, but please feel free to use our chat to ask any questions, and we're going to set aside some time at the end of our webinar today for those questions. We'll also have some of our lovely campus group teams members in the call or on the line, so they'll be able to answer some of those questions in your chat as well. So why don't you actually use the chat right now and throw in your campus and your location. While you're doing that, I'll run through our agenda for today. So we're going to start with the introduction of our hosts. My colleague Joe Pernick is also on the line, and he will be walking you through a basic overview of the virtual involvement fair. And then we'll turn it over to our hosts for their experience, their thoughts, and their expertise on hosting the virtual involvement fair. So with that, I will introduce our hosts for today. We have Carly Sue Bidet, who is the Director of Campus Activities at Cornell University. We have Scott Siegel-Ortiz, who is the Senior Associate Director of Student Life and Engagement at Columbia Business School. And both of those are member campuses here at CampusGroups. And we have Adam Weaver, who is the Assistant Director of Programs and Event Services at the University of California, San Diego, who has utilized and partnered with CampusGroups for the Virtual Involvement Fair, and you'll be hearing from them shortly. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Joe to show you a little bit about the Virtual Involvement Fair.
Hi, everyone. So before we get started, we do want to focus a lot on the best practices here, but we thought it'd be helpful if you haven't seen our platform before, at least be able to see what our virtual involvement fair looks like. So when a user logs into the system, the first thing they'll do is they'll fill out their profile. After that, you can direct them either to the homepage, which is this one-stop shop where you can direct someone right to the virtual involvement fair. You can also list all of your quick links if you want to direct them to Handshake, Canvas, whatever you want, all of your upcoming events. You also can send someone right to the fair. So you can bypass this if you want. But if we click into this, it's just going to bring us right to our map view. So a student would get to this page and they would see the map view. So this is our standard map view. This is going to show different zones. So you might have something like Find a Purpose, which is all of your career and professional development groups on campus. You might have academic groups. You might have a non-academic zone. You can customize this however you want. We also have the option to do a custom map. And this custom map is, and you'll see what our campuses, our hosts here, what they have done for their campus custom map here. But what this is going to do is allow you to create your own image and direct anyone right to the zone right from here. So you would upload this, we would map it. So that way, when you click on Join Together, you'll see all the groups in the Join Together. This can also link to any other events you're doing on campus. It can link to social media accounts, anything like that. So we're going to go back to our main zone here. If we click Find a Purpose, we'll see all of our groups that are listed in Find a Purpose. And then from here, if we click on List of Groups, you'll see all of the groups in the system. So by default, it'll be sorted by most active, meaning who's filled out the most information and who has the most visitors, chats, all that kind of stuff. So what you would see as a student visiting the fair, you'll see the group name as well as a tagline and all of the officers for that group. You then can click that if you're interested. This will add you to the contact list for the group. So that way they can reach out to you afterwards. You'll see photos, links, documents, and files that they've uploaded. And then you'll see these stats, which can be hidden. Some schools don't want to show this, but this kind of helps to create that virtual experience of seeing how many people are actually standing around this booth, how many people are interested in talking about it. You'll then see these bubbles for offline and for our video conference link. So the offline bubble, that just means no one's online. I can still start a chat. It will be green if someone is online. But here I can join a public chat room, which is going to be all of the officers in the group and anyone who's in the chat room. And then I can also choose to do a one-on-one chat. So it can just be me and one officer. You can choose whether you want to do this. So a group might say, I don't want to chat. None of us can make it, but we do want to show our booth off. So you can turn that off. And then you'll also see this video conference link. So this is set up through your Zoom, Skype, whatever you're using. From here, you know it's at 10 o'clock on Friday. I can just click into this and just pop into a Zoom room with that group. If the student clicks into the group, we'll see all that information we just went over, plus a little bit more. They can add a longer description. You'll see a video that might be introducing the group, that live video conference link, some documents, videos that these might be introducing your officers of the group. You can see some more photos, some more links, something like your website, social media, and then some interests here in industries. So this will help you to match with certain clubs. So you'll also have the option again here to chat with the officers and say that you're interested. A few other things to note, and like I said, we're not going to go too much into detail with this, but a student will also see all the groups that they said they're interested in. So you'll see here, I said that I'm interested in 2 groups. So these 2 groups are going to be listed right here for me. And then also our suggested groups. So when that user logs in and creates their profile, the first thing they'll have to do is set up what they're interested in. You'll see here, this group is suggested for me because I have 4 interests in common. So if I click onto this, you'll see that group as well as all the different interests that I'm matching on. So this group is selected all these interests and industries. I selected the same ones, so that's why we're matching. Other than that, the one other thing I did want to show you is the information booth for the student side. This is going to direct you to the people who are hosting the fair. So this would be that main group who might want to have some frequently asked questions and also just host their own booth. And then lastly, more on the admin side, after the fair, you can click on this participants list and you'll be able to see a list of all participants who attended the fair. You can filter by what group they're interested in, what video conferences they clicked on, and you can pull these reports on the participant side to see how many booths they visited and how many they said they're interested in. And then you can also pull all this data on the booth side. So that way a group can see how much data has been pulled, how many people visited their booth. And that's pretty much it for the quick little demo. If you are interested in seeing the full demo on how this is actually created, we do have some webinars in the future if you do want to see that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. All right, we're gonna move on to our hosts now. So let's go ahead and start with you, Carly. You've done a number of virtual involvement fairs, and today we're going to be highlighting your virtual club fest. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Carly, and I'm from Cornell. At Cornell, we absolutely love the fair feature, so much so that we've done 16 so far. And that seems like a lot, but Cornell is a rather large institution that likes to have lots of fairs. And so we've utilized it a couple different ways this past semester and last semester. Our Greek life departments have been using it for virtual recruitment. Our public service center has been using it to kind of engage with agencies downtown within the community and kind of connect students that work with within the public service center. And then a couple other areas that we really enjoyed utilizing the fair feature in is within our transfer and our new student programs. We recently just had a wellness fair that really provided a lot of resources for students as they were coming and entering to campus. It gave them a lot of different mental health and physical resources as it pertains to Cornell. And then we also did an academic resource fair. This was a little bit of a smaller fair. It wasn't our large club fest that we typically do each year. So it was a smaller fair just to help our new students get adjusted to all the different academic resources that we have here at Cornell. And then we do host 2 larger club fests each year in the fall and in the spring. Typically they're in person, but because we're kind of in a new era, we decided to host them virtually this year, and they absolutely went amazingly well. We have about 1,300 organizations here at Cornell. So we're always trying to find ways to allow all of those organizations to get some face time with students and with potential new members. And so utilizing the fair this year virtually was a great way to allow more clubs and organizations to participate and kind of gain a little bit of a larger platform when interacting with potential new members.
Awesome. And if we can show the next slide, well, you weren't kidding about your 16 fairs. Yeah. So this is a list of the fairs that you executed at Cornell, and some of the stats from your club day you can see along the top here as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about the next slide, if you can go there?
Sure. The next slide, we just have a couple photos that some of our student organizations sent to us. And so it's just kind of fun to see that, even though we're in a virtual platform and this is kind of a new experience for everyone, our students are smiling, they're enjoying it. And so this was kind of like the new normal. So we did have a lot of our student groups take photos of themselves in their actual booths during Club Fest and then tag our Instagram account. So it was just kind of a fun way to interact with students and see that they're enjoying it. And it was also a fun way for them to kind of push out like, hey, come join us at Club Fest, and kind of give the image of like, we're still welcoming, we're still interacting, we're still wanting to get new members. And so they're just finding different ways to interact and engage with students.
Yeah, and I love that peer-to-peer concept. I think it goes a long way. Awesome, thank you for sharing. All right, let's get some feedback from Scott, who also did a few fairs, and today we're going to be highlighting your club day.
Yep, thank you. So happy to be here. Nice to see everyone on screen. So just to give you an idea, or a preface, I work with our MBA student population. So we have 1,500 full-time students. We are, of course, a part of Columbia University, but my office works primarily with our full-time MBA students. So we've got 1,500 of them, and we operate on 3 pillars: academics, careers, and community. Obviously, all very important parts of the MBA experience, and in particular, community is very important here. For the 1,500 students that we have 80 clubs. We have about, at any given time, 300 to 350 officers. So they love their clubs, and Club Day is important because it kicks off not only club joining, but it also kicks off student leadership or student programming. So clubs can program after Club Day. And this decision that we made was very important because we obviously made the call to go virtual with our orientation, which we welcome our first years, just a couple of weeks prior to Club Day. And this was an important start to the semester. Club Day is important to our clubs, it's important to our students. And essentially, like I said, it kicks off all the extracurricular experience. And obviously our MBA students were not thrilled with the decision to go virtual, obviously knowing that we were in a very different world. And we were looking for different platforms that can give our MBAs the opportunity to connect and still have that experience while not necessarily being in person. In person, we would fit everyone into the largest auditorium on campus. We would have about 700 or 800 visitors. We would have all of our clubs or officers. It was very festive. People loved it. So when we were looking at options, this kind of came out of nowhere. I was just looking through my email, and lo and behold, CampusGroups shot an email out being like, hey, we have this new module. It's only so-and-so dollars. Let's look at it. And while I'm fortunate to have a budget to work with, this was perfect. So we went through the motions, and what I did essentially was like I worked alongside student government. I advised a number of roles, and we're like, can this work? Do you think that this fits? And it worked. I mean, we launched it, and as you'll see the numbers on the next screen, like they were very impressive. We had all of our clubs represent. As you can see, we have 1,000 officers, and we had over 1,100 participants, which completely blew through what we would normally see in person in the fall. See all the booth visits and the chat messages and the video conferences. And I, too, as an advisor to some of these clubs, as much as I loved going around from table to table in the in-person, I got to a chance to jump into some of these Zooms. And I had just like off-the-cuff conversations. And what was interesting to me is like, it almost seemed like some of the clubs preferred this type of experience, because in a loud auditorium with 800 people, can you really kind of have those one-on-one intimate conversations? And in most cases, you can't. Here, they could have those one-on-one conversations. They could have a smaller group to have the conversations, and it was able to sort of resonate a bit more. So the feedback was outstanding. People loved it. And of course, we did it in the spring, and we had similar success. So, and as you can see too, one of our academic centers also sort of caught on and decided to do a career fair as well. So it was a complete success. Our students loved it, and they got an opportunity to see each other and really interact, even without the in-person component. And it was a really good kickoff to the fall semester for us.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so just like Cornell and Columbia Business School, Adam, you used CampusGroups for a variety of fairs as well. And today we're going to be looking at your virtual library walk.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Adam Weaver from the University of California, San Diego. And we were in a little bit of a different situation in that we weren't already utilizing CampusGroups as a platform. So like many of you, when COVID came, we weren't prepared in the sense that we didn't have a lot of virtual platforms set up to utilize it. So we did what any university does, and we created a task force to look at that. And so we looked at probably about 50 different virtual platforms because we were really seeing that our students were struggling with that Zoom fatigue already coming in. Students were having their classes on Zoom, our events were all on Zoom. That was the virtual platform that our campus had. And so we looked at a variety of different things. We were really looking at something that allowed us to present information, but also have that engagement piece as well. And we came across CampusGroups and their new ability to have the virtual fair without the full enterprise license, and we kind of jumped at that chance. And they helped us set it up. I think we've done 8 fairs now, so we're a little bit different in the sense of, or my role has been a little bit different than Scott and Carly's in that I wasn't necessarily running some of the fairs myself. What we did was, because we didn't have a centralized campus group admin for the campus, I took on that role. And I worked with different departments around campus that were looking to come up with a new virtual platform. And so it was my role to kind of build the system from scratch. And so it was unique in that sense, where a lot of my initial time was set in setting up groups and members and the officers. And it honestly seemed like a pretty daunting task. For a little bit of a background, March 13th is kind of the day everyone remembers when everything kind of shut down. Well, March 5th is when I decided to drive across country from Baltimore and accept a new position at the University of San Diego, California. So I was on campus for about 8 days before we decided to shut down. So I had a little bit of a learning curve across the board, but honestly, the platform was so easy to set up that I was able to get the fair set up in just a few days, honestly, completely from scratch, which was a huge thing for us. And so some of the things that we've done, like Carly mentioned, our fraternity and sorority life has used it for recruitment. We've used it for our student involvement fairs, some academic fairs. One of the new ones that's the top one here on our list, our visual arts department is going to be utilizing it. And it's almost going to be kind of like a virtual museum, so to speak, where they're going to be showcasing art and different things that our students have done. And so we've really been able to kind of get away from that Zoom fatigue and present the information in a different way to our students.
Wow, that's really awesome. I'm excited to see your visual arts fair there. I'm going to pop into that. So I have a couple questions for you, if that's okay. Before we do, actually, let's look at that fair piece those other fair maps. So as Joe mentioned in his demo, that you can add a custom fair map. So you saw a couple of the ones here, but these are just this is an image that we created just to showcase some of the other really cool maps that we've seen. And this can be anything from an actual picture of your campus, so it helps them feel like they're a little bit more on campus, and or it can be something that your marketing team comes up with. But this can be really creative and help tie in some of your branding.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, we did have a couple of questions coming in from the audience as well. So the first one was for the three presenters. Are any of your campuses doing any in-person meetings, or is everything completely remote for you at the time of these fairs?
I saw us all go off mute at the same time. But I'll jump in. At Cornell, we have a mixture of in-person and remote instruction. All of our students that felt comfortable are on campus, and we're about a 90% capacity. Currently, all of our student organizations, we have a phase approach to engagement last semester and this semester. And so currently all of our student orgs are operating, we're in phase yellow, which means we're completely virtual. We're hoping to get ready to move within the next couple of days, if not week or so, to move to phase green, which would be a mixture of small 10 or fewer in-person gatherings for activities and for meetings. So we are completely virtual right now, but our students are on campus and they're walking around. And so we still had, we just had our spring Club Fest, and we still had 5,000 students attend that Club Fest. So even though they're all on campus, they were like, let's go to Club Fest, which was good on our end to see.
Yeah, sorry. So basically we've been operating under high flex, which is another fancy word for hybrid, but we have allowed our clubs to do in-person programming essentially since the beginning of the fall. Now we have adjusted the capacity based off of whatever is recommended by New York State. So we have been operating under the 10-person rule for quite some time now. So that sort of obviously impacts what they can do in person. There are specific rules that we've set forth for using building space versus like going outside and utilizing restaurants and things like that, or activities within the city. So although this obviously Club Day was fully virtual, and people were still very much willing to engage, especially at the beginning, especially in the fall when this was all still fairly brand new. They completely bought in 100% to the idea.
Sure, and our campus is pretty similar to what the others have talked about. We do have the benefit of when it's winter in California, it's still 65 degrees outside. So we do have outdoor classrooms in tents around campus, but we do have all of our events and meetings have been virtual at this time.
Excellent. So it sounds like for everybody, it's actually a little bit of a mix. It's not exclusively remote, which kind of gives you the opportunity to service a lot of different populations with in-person and these virtual experiences. So thank you for that. A couple of the other questions that came in, and we may be touching on this later in the presentation, but there's a couple of folks who would love to hear about your reporting and ROI related to this. So if you're going to touch on it later, then feel free to jump in then, but I'll keep posting those questions as they come in.
We may touch on that a little bit. So if not, we'll kind of circle back to that at the end, if that's all right. Okay. So one of my questions was going to be about the pain points that brought you to the virtual fair, but it seems like everybody kind of already answered that question. So I will ask a question about just adapting from how are you adapting from your usual programming, thinking about your marketing and incentivizing, and even going a little bit deeper on that. How did you engage your students to participate in the fair that is now a completely different program than they're used to?
I can go first on this one. So I would say two of the successful one of the successful marketing strategies that we've had was I suggested to the groups that were doing the fair to put together kind of a marketing packet where they created the social media graphics, the graphics for a website, the blurb to put out on the social media. And all of the groups or the organizations that participated in the fair, they shared that with them. That way the messaging was consistent coming out, the branding and the graphics were consistent. And we really found that to be a successful way. One thing that we did for incentivizing that the students really seemed to enjoy, and I'll probably talk about this a little bit later more in detail, but we kind of did a variety of different things with some of our fairs where, and one of the things that drew us to CampusGroups specifically was the ability to have a multi-day fair. A lot of the other platforms out there were single day, just a few hours. And that was kind of a drawback for us because we had a lot of international students and there's still classes going on. And we wanted to really get as many students as possible to attend these. And so being able to have multi-day fairs was key for us. And so on one of the days of one of the fairs, we kind of rebranded the fair a little bit with some of our graphics on the homepage with Where's Waldo in the graphic. And we encouraged students to go through the fair and they had to find 5 of the Waldos that we had hidden throughout the fair in different videos and graphics. And then they'd submit a form and tell us which booths the Waldos were in. And they could win prizes. Our top prize was like AirPods, and they could win gift cards and a variety of different things. So that was one way that we had incentivized students to attend one of our fairs.
Something Adam said was huge for us too, is the ability to break the fair up. Obviously in the past in person, we would do it all at once, but the whole purpose of HighFlex is to be able to have the flexibility to, attend classes at different times, have recordings, things like that. So for us, we're fortunate because Club Day is important to our students. So like they will show up. It's just sort of a manner of how we ensure them to really actually enjoy the experience, right? I want to hear good feedback afterwards to make sure that this is something that we can continue to do. So for us, a lot of it is just about student leader buy-in and using them to help sort of move the message along. We worked with our communications team to create the map and give us a logo for Club Day, which allowed us to sort of, as Adam was talking about, like streamline our branding, but at the same time, like we always rely on multi-layered messaging. So while we send out a message on behalf of OSA or Office of Student Affairs, we ask our student leaders to do the same. They have Slack as their preferred method of communication on the unofficial side. So we work with the clubs, we work with our student government to make sure those messages are blasted out. And then we work primarily with the presidents of all the organizations to also ensure that they have the up-to-date communication too. So that's where we really lean. We really work closely with our students on making sure the messaging gets out. But I think that, what was also great is that we gave them the flexibility to access the fair's information, across the time span of a month joining what would be our club joining period. So we promoted the 2 sessions in the fall as live. So you would have an opportunity to talk with the club officer, talk with other members of the club, but you'd still be able to access all the great information at the club booths that stay there, that are stored throughout the month until we turn the fair off. So that was also another big win for us. And the other thing too that we offered our clubs is sort of like hey, this could be really good for you, is the opportunity to continue to use their booths. If they ever wanted to set up another time to have a live chat or a live Zoom, as you can see from our data from before, our students love talking to each other. So they can always use that opportunity to do that again.
I would echo everything that Adam and Scott said. One thing that we did was we did have kind of almost like separate marketing campaigns for students, so like attendees versus the officers and the student leaders that were running the booth. And so we were a little strategic in like, this is what to expect as someone who's viewing a virtual or participating in virtual Club Fest, and then this is what to expect as you're a student officer setting up your booth. When you go in and get to do your booth, our students at Cornell are really competitive. So they quickly found out that the more you kind of like spice up your booth, the higher up in the list of organizations your booth shows up. So if you have more photos and you have more links and you have more videos and officers present, then your booth or that student organization is going to be a little bit higher up in the category. So that was something that our students at Cornell really enjoyed.
That's awesome.
I think, Adam, you have sparked a lot of great ideas at other campuses with your Where's Waldo idea, so thank you so much for that. Claire had a question that if after the fair you had sent out any follow-up items to club officers or new students to keep them engaged in the process. That question's not specifically for Adam. Anybody can speak to it.
Sure, I can talk about it though. So, and Carly just kind of talked about it. There really is two levels of marketing that you need to do for every fair, and one's geared towards the organizations that participated in the fair, and then one's towards the attendees. And so, because of the way that we were set up, and my area is really helping other organizations run the fairs, I didn't participate in the post-fair marketing campaign, but what I did was really put together a packet detailing for explaining how the organization can find all the metrics afterwards, so that they knew exactly who to contact, how to find the data in the platform themselves. And then at the end of that, we kind of included, hey, these are all the students that said that they were interested. Make sure they reach out. This is just like they came up to you at a table in an in-person fair. So it really is, like Carly said, kind of that two-pronged marketing that's important for these virtual fairs.
Can I also say that we surveyed our club officers afterwards? And I think that what's important for them to feel like is if they not only have buy-in, but they were part of the process, I think. And, we made sure to get their opinion on the fair, how it went, how they engaged, things like that. So that's the input that we're going to use to continue to use, and we'll talk about this later, but we'll continue to use this model, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, one thing I'll also note that we didn't cover in the demo is that the officers of the group also have access to all the data for their group. So you don't need to pull that report for them. They'll be able to pull a list of all people who were interested, all people who visited, so they can reach out to those students individually.
Great. All right. So in thinking about how, most of you had some previous solely in-person fairs, how would you compare that virtual experience in terms of the registration process for the fair, activity during the fair, and then some metrics that you've gotten from the participants in that virtual experience? Why don't we start with you, Scott?
Yeah, I think what I touched on earlier is important to reemphasize is just the level of interaction that they get, which is something that they don't get at the big fair, because it's loud, it's in person, there's so many people, and you're essentially moving in and out of these rows where you have a time crunch, right? You need to talk to this club, you need to talk to that club. On the other side, on the virtual aspect, they had the time to be able to speak with the officers and really, take stock on what the club is about, right? You have all the information at your fingertips too, because we made sure to emphasize to our clubs, the more information you put in the booth, the more visual, the more your booth will be visited, right? It rises up the ranks, you get more exposure, win-win for everyone. So they not only have the visual information, but they can have the one-on-one chat or Zoom engagement, and that has allowed for better conversation. I will also say that while we were able to get sort of baseline, data around how many people attend our fairs, the virtual fair gave us all this really cool data around how many chat messages went, how many Zoom, videos were happening at the same time. So it shows the level of engagement. And I'm sure we all suffer from the same thing in student affairs, that we're continually pressed for more data. It's the qualitative stuff doesn't work as much anymore. They want to see numbers. They want to see why this is important. They want to see why we're spending money on a platform like this. Well, now you have the data to be listen, I have 80 clubs. All the clubs were online. Almost all of them were utilizing Zoom. I had over 11,000 chat messages sent. This works. They want to talk to each other. We just need to give them a platform to do so. So that data will, again, allow us to continue to sort of prove that, virtual engagement can work. And we can continue to see how it fits into the future.
Awesome. Carly, any thoughts to share on that?
Yeah, I think one thing, when I first attended our Club Fest at Cornell in person, it's a huge event. It's 4,000, 5,000 individuals in our big Barton Hall. We have 400 clubs participating. And so we were already kind of at that phase of kind of maxing out of our own space. And we don't really have a large enough space on campus. And so having this kind of new platform to allow for really any student to go at any point and feel comfortable interacting was something that was amazing. Like I said, I stepped into our Club Fest the first time I was at Cornell, and I'm an introvert. So like an introvert working in campus activities, walking into a room with 4,000 people, I was like, holy crap. And so I think we started kind of thinking like we need to start shifting our perspective a little bit to allow for individuals, especially students that are completely new to Cornell, to feel comfortable in an environment where they're not being overwhelmed with, 300 other clubs and, music in the background and dance groups kind of walking around. And so the virtual platform really allowed us to have a little bit of both. We still had videos playing, groups were still allowed to spice up their areas. But it really was conducive for any type of student wanting to find engagement and allowed them to do it on their own time.
Awesome. Thank you. Adam, we'll leave it up to you now.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo almost everything that they both said. I would say for us, similar, we have close to 700 student organizations. And so to be able to have a fair where all of them can participate at the same time, we just don't have a physical space on campus that happens. And so the way that it happened in the past is it would happen over almost a week. And it happened on the library walk, which is where I came up with the idea for our custom map, is trying to make it look like the physical space. And that's kind of how we designed that custom map. But in person, that fair would last over a week, and there would be a set number, tents each day for the organizations. And so if a student came, they would only see whatever fairs were or whatever groups were there that day, and would maybe miss out on a lot of different organizations. And to just kind of echo the experience of the student that's maybe a little more introverted, one of the big things that's different than in person, obviously, is there is that passive experience where students can come in and they can look at the fair, they can browse booths, they can watch the videos, the pictures, and they don't necessarily maybe interact at all with you. And so going back to the feedback that we got from some students, some of the questions was like, we felt like no one came to our booth. And then when we showed them the data, like Scott was talking about, you can show them that there was 100 students that over the course of that couple hours came to their booth, and maybe they didn't engage all of them, but they got their information and saw it. And so when you're standing in a ballroom at a table, you kind of are mentally taking note of how many people walked past you, how many people you interacted with. And that was kind of a different experience for the virtual fair, but it does allow those students that may be intimidated by a 5,000 person event or not want to have that dialogue. So it's great for that.
That's great. All right, I have one more question for the group, and then we'll just quickly go over a couple of best practices that Joe and I have and our team here, and then we'll open the line for questions. So what advice, we'll start with you, Carly, but what advice would you give someone who's just starting the process or exploring the virtual involvement fair process?
Great, thank you. And my Wi-Fi just cut out, so I apologize if I cut out again. I would say we have a variety of different fairs at Cornell, and so we've kind of at first, we thought having too many organizations or clubs participate in one fair would be a little bit challenging. And so we actually broke it up into two different maps. And so what it turns out, that's actually more challenging for us and more challenging for students. And so that was one bit of advice that, depending upon how structurally your office is set up, I know Cornell is rather large, but we would definitely go with one map, one fair, and kind of market it maybe over the course of multiple days instead of having two different fairs marketed over the course of a couple different days. So I think that's one bit of advice. And I think another bit is to have everything housed on a website. We have a web page that directs students back to campus activities. I could share that in the link in a little bit. And so it was really helpful for students if they got lost anywhere. they can go directly on our website or the homepage of Campus Groups and easily get redirected to where they need to be. And that was if they were an officer or an organization themselves, or if they were an attendee. So it was like a one-stop shop. Here's the information that you need to move forward with your experience in the fair. So those are just 2 bits of information that I think was, after going through a variety of different fairs, that's something that we've learned in terms of best practices.
Thank you. Adam, you want to tell us what you would share?
Sure. I feel like many of you may be in a similar boat that we were at UCSD, in that if you're not necessarily a Campus Groups enterprise school, it does seem a little intimidating to kind of start from scratch, but the process is easy. My recommendation will be to centralize your process because the platform is so interconnected. Every fair it's one of those platforms that kind of builds off of itself as more users and groups get added in. And so having the information inputted into the system by one person or one area is really important, so that everything's talking to each other. That's something that we kind of learned after our first fair. Joe, I'll give him a shout out, was great in helping me fix some things that we learned along the way by not doing it that way. But and then I guess the other thing I would just say is we really learned that, and while we're almost a year now into this virtual space, your fair is only as good as the virtual content that's on it. And I think that was one of the challenges some of our organizations faced, was creating that virtual content, the graphics or the videos. And so really helping the groups get that virtual content built up before the fair starts is really important to them.
That's awesome. This is really great content. I'm sure people are looking for some pitfalls to avoid, so this is really helpful. Scott?
I go back to getting the student buy-in. I mean, I believe that our fair was successful because we got our student leaders to buy into this whole idea of having a virtual fair early. And then we gave them all the information they needed to know within enough time to plan to make sure their booths looked attractive, to make sure if they had any questions about their settings, to reach out to us. And it's interesting too, because now we're almost a year into the pandemic, and I'm sure much like our student population, they're looking for ways to begin to go back to in person, but it's going to have to be a conversation that we'll have with all of our students at certain points, depending on where you're at, that like the fall semester may not look like what you expect, right? And like how we will continue to sort of need to look at these hybrid models to continue to offer the type of student engagement that we want as a field, as a profession. So if you're interested in looking at a fair at this point, like start beginning to have conversations with your incoming student leaders, your outgoing student leaders, to begin to sort of lay out like this is an option. This is something that we can look at to continue to offer student engagement, even with an uncertain future, and get their buy-in early, because then they become their advocates, and you can sell the message together. And obviously students will listen to other students before they listen to us. So like that's a big message too I want to send out, is continue to work on getting buy-in early and help them plan your event with you.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Peer-to-peer conversations go so far. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to just switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit about best practices. I'm going to move it over to Joe just for a second, and then we'll open up the line for some questions. Joe?
Perfect. Awesome. Let me move this over here. Cool. Yeah. So we kind of organize our best practices kind of in the order that it happens. So as Adam said, we set up that fair fairly quickly, but we still had a lot of time in between the setup and the time of the event. So giving yourself a lot of time to at least advertise your event, and also to get your officers involved and give them time to actually set up their booth. The other thing we want to recommend is to get departments and student services involved as well. It doesn't have to be just a club fair. You can have a zone that is specific to those departments and allow students to connect with them. Encouraging video conferences in your booths. That's one way you can get people to actually go and attend a specific booth. Encouraging officers to add a lot of content. This helps to engage the students. I think all of them said here, the more content you add, the higher up you're going to show up in that listing. So that's how we can get students to fill in more. The information booth, add frequently asked questions, add some training videos, add all the questions that you think a student might get confused on, add that in there. We obviously recommend the custom map, as all three of our hosts mentioned. Use your campus branding, get your marketing department involved. One of the things we saw that was really cool was a student organization designed one of the maps for one of our fairs. So get students involved and show off their work. Allow your custom map to link out to events and social media during the fair. We've seen a lot of different events. We've seen a virtual bingo. We've seen a live DJ. We've seen a scavenger hunt. There's so many different things that you can map out on the custom map. So get as many people as you want involved and have events during the fair. One example of that as well is, and I think Adam will speak to this in a second here, but if your fair is over multiple days, have one event each day. You can also add professional development or welcome sessions. One fair map that we saw specifically had a click here to get started, and it directed to a YouTube video that was the dean just welcoming students. But you can also do things like we've seen a financial aid session, just a workshop for new students and like how to sign up for classes. So you can do some workshops as well outside of just your student clubs. Definitely incorporate some prizes and some giveaways. So like as Adam said, what was it? Find, what was it again, Adam?
Where's Waldo?
Where's Waldo? Thank you. Yeah,
Find Fred.
That is such a good example. But we've also seen if you've visited 10 booths or more, then you get entered to win a prize. Say you're interested in 5 or more and get entered to win a prize. And then lastly, just leave the fair open for a whole week and have some surge time. So it could be, we're going to have it open Monday through Friday. That way we can engage everyone in every time zone. But at 2 p.m. on Monday, everyone's going to be online at the same time. So let's try to be online then. And that's all I got for best practices, and we'll send it over to Kelly for some more final questions.
Well, I still see some questions coming in. Andrea, do you have any that you think would be good for the group to answer?
Yeah, there was a question that I think Adam was going to take related to, actually there were two. One was speaking as a school who doesn't use CampusGroups year round. And the other, I'm going to scroll back up, but Adam, I think you know what it was. You've already volunteered, so you could just jump in if you'd like. Oh, the maximum number of time for student leaders being in the booth.
Yeah, and Joe kind of just talked about it a little bit. We've kind of done, I would say, 3 different types of fairs. Our first one we started with, it was one day, it was 3 hours long, and all the groups and organizations were encouraged to be on and live for that entire time, and then the fair was shut down. And the feedback we got from that was the 3-hour live time was a little on the long side for the student organizations. And so we kind of took that and we've tweaked it now where, like Joe said, some of the fairs we've extended over multiple days or up to a week. And then we promote and encourage live times during it that are 1 hour to sometimes an hour and a half. And we try to stagger those. One day it's maybe in the morning, then it's in the evening. And so that way, depending on the student's schedule, they can potentially attend one of the other live times, but it doesn't put a ton of pressure on the students or the organizations to be live. And one of the other things I don't think I talked about that I really found beneficial compared to in person was the ability to have active booths, even if no one was actually signed in from the organization. So they can still activate their booth and have their videos, their pictures, their information available to be seen, even if they're not available to chat. So like Joe showed us earlier, it shows up as offline, but they can still send a message. The organization will get an email that they have an unread message. So there is still ways to communicate, and the organization can still get their information out there, even if they're not there. If you did that in person and you just had 50 empty unattended tables, it would look a little strange and not very welcoming. So that was definitely one of the benefits. I think there was another question about not being a campus group, campus or university. So yeah, UCSD, we are not on the enterprise platform with CampusGroups. So it does take a little bit of building from scratch. And I would say one of the bigger challenges is just getting the student buy-in. And Scott's talked a lot about that. So not only did we have to kind of teach the students about attend this virtual fair, even though we've never done virtual fairs before, but we also had to teach them about what's campus groups, how do we draw traffic to campus groups. And two things that campus groups specifically offers that really helped with that and security was we were able to connect to our single sign-on, so students felt like it was secure, it was connected to the campus, and we also were able to get a branded URL. So ours is just virtualfairs.ucsd.edu, and so it gives a little more substance to the campus and the students looking to attend as well, helping kind of build up that brand recognition.
Great. Any other questions from the group?
We don't have any coming in live at the moment, Kelly. There may be a few more as people gather their thoughts with all of this exciting content. I'll just take a quick moment to mention, I know Joe said we do have some other webinars coming up focused on this topic. If anybody is not a current user and they do have any interest in it, of course, you can feel free to email us at sales@campusgroups.com, and our website also has a lot of great resources. We can send over some recordings along with this follow-up as well, so you can feel free to reach out if it is of interest, but of course, the focus today was on best practices.
Yeah, awesome, thank you.
One final question I think we have time for, just a little bit more about how you measured success of this, maybe a little bit more on reporting and showing the ROI for the system. Scott, I know you spoke to this earlier.
Yeah, so two things. One, first of all, I found it very exciting to sit and watch the numbers jump. Like, I don't think that we mentioned that, but like I personally enjoyed being there. And I was like texting my director to think, oh my God, look at the numbers, look at the numbers. So that was really good. So that's a personal sort of measure of success, but being able to sort of show an email, like my information technology team, my dean of students, and all the actual stats of like how many people participated, the breakdown, if I wanted to pull a report to see what year they were, things like that, I would actually be able to pull all of that from the system, take a screenshot of the numbers, where I wasn't really able to do that so much in person. And then the second part to that too was just making sure that I took the time to survey the officers to get their insight on what made the event successful. Did you enjoy this mode of engagement? Things like that. So I would say it's a sort of a two-part, being able to show that this was a successful fair. And actually, if there's one other thing I wanted to point out, just in case anyone else had any questions, I know there's a question earlier about like how this would sort of translate into the graduate space, because a lot of people sort of assign an involvement fair with undergrads. Just to clarify, like I said before, I work with the MBA students, and they're graduate students. So I work strictly with graduate students, and we obviously saw success in that space too.
Yeah, and I'll just hop in to go off of that to mention that although we're kind of focused on our club fairs, you did hear about some other fairs that we can do. So one example is a grad fair, which was an academic fair for a grad school to advertise their different grad programs to their undergraduate students. Like Adam said, they have their arts fair. We've done a high school fair, college fair. So a high school used our program to have colleges have their own booths. We have an upcoming honors thesis program kind of fair. So each student has their own booth where they're showcasing their honors project. And then lastly, we have the career fair, which does look a little bit different. There are a few extra features that the regular virtual fair doesn't have. So the ability to book meetings with recruiters, to submit a resume or apply for a job. So there are a lot of different use cases outside of just using this for a regular student club fair.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I do want to respect everyone's time. I think we're going to hang out here for a couple minutes if anybody has questions. If not, please feel free to go. But I do want to thank our hosts, Adam, Carly, and Scott, and then Adam Daniels and the Student Organization Summit. And thank all of you for your time and attention today. This has been really fun, and we just thank everybody for their time today. Let us know if you have questions, and we'll be here for just a couple extra minutes.
I think we need the on hold music when people are logging on, Kelly, and then a little bit of outro dance music
I agree.
too.
If anybody wants to beatbox, now is the time. All right. We do have a question. What, if any, challenges did you face in planning and implementation from Jewel? Anybody want to take that?
Honestly, it was like, once we found this option, it was easy, to be quite honest.
The
Sort of
challenge is
figuring-
finding it.
Right, the challenge was finding it. Like very luckily, I was paying attention to my email.
Yeah, and also note too, I think our platform is kind of built so that we start the initial implementation of like getting the fair created. But once you get past that step, it's really on the students, and it's a lot less work than an actual real fair. You create the platform and then the students fill out their booth. And that's really, if anything, probably like one of the biggest stresses is waiting for the students to actually fill out their booth.
And one thing I'll note too is that you aren't doing it alone. You're doing it with usually Joe. As you can see, he's very well versed in this, and we have a lot of resources that we can share with you as well. How much lead time did you give yours? Is it for student officers you're referring to? I think that's the question, but how much lead time did you give your student officers?
Ours is very per fair. I would say we probably, I encourage ours to do about 2 weeks, with a hard push a week out, because just like we all were when we were students, they a lot of them wait until the 11th hour to kind of start their booth. The good thing is the booth can be built very quickly. I've had sitting in the information booth at the fair, I've had students, or to be honest with you, the students catch onto the platform significantly faster than the faculty and staff do. But I've had people log in 5 minutes before the fair starts, send a message in the information booth. How do I build my booth, and kind of walk them through the process and get it set up within a few minutes. I think if you give them too much time, it's probably they're going to push it off. So we found that 2 weeks to be about the success rate, the most successful for us.
Yeah, also note too that we provide a couple of resources. So we provide an example email template that you can send to your officers with like all the steps they need to take. And we also provide a 5-minute like training on how to set up your booth. So typically you shouldn't get a lot of questions on how to actually set up the booth because it's covered in those resources.
Great. Any final thoughts from you all as we head out?
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you again. Enjoy your day, everyone.